Privatize Canada Post now. That is the message that Canadian consumers and taxpayers need to be sending to Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal government. Last week, Canada Post employees, their union, voted on an agreement put forward by Canada Post to give employees a 13% raise over the course of the next 4 years. But overwhelmingly, members of the union rejected that deal, and the possibility of yet another Canada Post strike is very much on the table. We all remember what happened last fall. It was weeks of disruption for businesses and consumers, and we cannot see that again. If Canada Post was privatized, we wouldn't have to see that again. Now, why should we privatize Canada Post? Number one, just look at Canada's fiscal situation. We are facing a deficit that could quite possibly be at the federal level $100 billion. Our fiscal house is in shambles, and Prime Minister Mark Carney needs to find savings. Instead of finding savings, Canada Post is losing money left, right, and center. Last year, Canada Post lost $1.3 billion, and Canada Post has not run a profit in 8 years. This led to a $1 billion bailout in January of Canada Post from the Trudeau government, and projections are that $1 billion annual bailouts will become the new norm if changes do not happen, and severe changes do not happen at Canada Post. But the union is holding Canada Post hostage. Canada Post CEO Doug Ettinger recognizes that changes have to be made, but the union simply won't allow for the changes that need to take place. That is why Canada Post must be privatized. Now look at examples in Europe. In countries all throughout Europe, including Germany and Austria, their postal services were privatized long ago, and customer service went up, and consumer prices actually went down when accounting for inflation. So it is a good news story out of Europe. Better consumer deliverables and also lower prices. So Mark Carney needs to be looking at this very closely. Canadian taxpayers and consumers cannot afford annual $1 billion bailouts. Canadian businesses and consumers cannot afford to be held hostage with the possibility of strikes yet again after what we saw happen last fall. And we cannot allow Canada Post to continue leeching taxpayers year after year in this failing situation where the union is holding Canada Post hostage and refusing to make any much needed changes. So now is the time for Prime Minister Mark Carney to get serious about rolling back federal spending and reforming things at the federal level. And one of those things that must happen is the privatization of Canada Post, which would finally rid consumers of the possibility of being held hostage by a postal strike that would wreak havoc on Canada's economy and Canadian residential consumers.